Good morning. Okay, I was going to say no response at all. I'm Sammy Loudermilk. I'm the CEO of the Enterprise Center. We are a workforce development and community development nonprofit organization focused on technology and innovation. And I'm pleased to introduce our featured speaker this morning, Klint Walker with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Klint Walker is the cybersecurity advisor for Region 4, which covers the Southeast United States. As the CSA, Klint is the liaison between federal services and state, local, territorial, and tribal governments, critical infrastructure, and private industry. He serves as a focal point for communications to promote cyber preparedness, incident response, risk mitigation, and situational awareness. He provides direct coordination, outreach, and regional support in order to protect cyber components essential to the sustainability, preparedness, and protection of the nation's critical infrastructure and key resources. In other words, Klint is a busy man. Mr. Walker also held the position of Chief Information Security Officer for the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. In this role, he was responsible for the operational resiliency of classified networks and facilities in adherence with DoD standards and guidelines. Please join me in welcoming Klint Walker.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I am shocked you guys invited me back to speak again. All right. How many of you have heard of CISA before? Everybody? All right. So I'm going to keep standing in front of that, I'm sure. So my name is Klint Walker. I am actually the acting chief of cyber for Region 4 at the current moment. So as we keep expanding our role in our program, I'm in charge of a team of, I have 26 people. Well, I'm supposed to have 26 people. I currently only have 14 of those people in places. But we are in charge with going out there and being best friends to critical infrastructure, state and local governments, and critical infrastructure in order to help secure our nation's, assets. So this is me. I recently graduated. So last year I graduated with my master's in Homeland Security and Defense from the Naval Postgraduate School. This was actually one of the image here was taken as one of our assignments was we had to talk to AI and we had to so we were partnered up and we had to work with AI. And you had to, using only words, describe your partner to AI and have it generate a picture of what they thought that person looked like. And this is what my partner thought I looked like based on just describing things to artificial intelligence or the AI model there. I think it did a pretty good job. So, but besides that, I've been doing cybersecurity for over 30 years. I started off in the automotive industry, moved to the banking industry, went to the intelligence community, worked for the Department of Health and Human Services, went back to private industry for a short 6-month term before the Department of Homeland Security asked me to come help them build this program. And I've been doing that for the last 11 years, and I've loved every second of it. So I really enjoy what I do, but I would love to put myself out of a job. I would love for the world to be more secure. So let me start all of this by asking all of you, how many of you feel more secure today than you did last year? Isn't that one thing that we've worked on? Isn't that the one thing that we're doing? We're all supposed to be doing more security. We talk about it. There's commercials about it. Everybody keeps talking about we're building a more secure future. Yet everybody I talk to, nobody feels more secure today than they did, last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Why is that? That's a question that we're going to look at here, as we move forward. And I really want this to be more of a conversation. I have slides, but I very rarely stick to them. You're going to see me fast forward through a lot of them. I'm external affairs' biggest nightmare because I usually get on stage and just start talking. I never even know what I'm going to say. But these are the obligatory CISA slides. We are the nation's risk managers. We are out here to try and help promote not only federal network protection, but also protecting cybersecurity or critical infrastructure across our nation's great assets out there. So when you really think about critical infrastructure, when you think about the 16 sectors of critical infrastructure, the federal government doesn't own or operate most of those critical infrastructure sectors. 80% of critical infrastructure is owned by the private sector and state and local governments. And yet we all rely on it, so it's got to be protected somehow. There are some places to do that, regulations are part of it and things like that, but we're really out there trying to help promote cybersecurity to make sure that even the smallest companies have access to resources and access to expertise that they normally wouldn't have access to. So that's actually my division in CISA. Is called the Integrated Operations Divisions, or IOD as we like to say. And our job is to actually work with all those partners, is to go out there and shake hands, kiss babies, and give people the help that they need to be those experts that we have. My program is called the Cybersecurity Advisor Program. We are Region 4 down here, so I cover 8 states. When we started this program, 11 years ago, it was just me. I covered 8 states all by my lonesome. Do you know how much critical infrastructure there is in Region 4? You notice that no other region has 8 states, right? There used to be data calls where they'd be like, hey, we need you to reach out and talk to the governor of every single state, and you have 1 week to do it. I'm like, okay, for the states that only have 3, that's easy. But when I have 8, you know how hard it is to get on 8 governor schedules? So that's some of the challenges we face. That's why we have a much larger field force these days than we used to have. Matter of fact, we have what we call cybersecurity coordinators. We have 1 in every state. They live in the state capitals. They work directly with the state. And then we also have cybersecurity advisors, and they work where the greatest collection of critical infrastructure would be. And we have those all over the nation, especially in Region 4. I've got a couple of vacancies at the current moment. Matter of fact, my Tennessee position is currently vacant, although I was just given permission by headquarters to fill that position. So I'm going to be starting my interviews for that actually next week. So I'll have somebody to introduce you to next year. All right. But this is the Cybersecurity Advisor Program. I'm just going to gloss over this because what we really do is we are looking at cyber preparedness. We want to help you what we call left of bang. We want to help you before something bad happens. We want to help you prepare. And we're going to do that through strategic messaging, working groups, partnerships, cyber assessments, and incident coordination. So all the things above incident coordination, those are all the things we want to do with you beforehand. We want to come out and do tabletop exercises with you. We want to do cyber assessments with you. We want to start talking to you about how you look, how you feel, what your fears are, so that we can start getting you help along those areas, so that we don't have to do incident coordination with you. But we are there should you have an issue, should you suffer an incident, we can definitely come out and still help you. The fun thing about everything I just said there, and I'll talk about this more toward the end, there's no charge for anything that we do. We are I can't use the term free, we're an already paid for asset for you. Your tax dollars have already paid for us. Please invite us out to come work with you. But let's start for the fun things. For those of you who saw me last year, this is the same. I start all of my slides with this, or all my presentations with this, is an homage to my father. Because my father told me that life is about the little things. My dad lived to embarrass me as much as possible when I was growing up, as most fathers do. I do that to my kids. But one of the things that he used to tell me is that life is about the little things. And this is one of his favorite stories before I'd go to bed at night. He'd tell me, for want of a nail. And for those of you who've never seen this before, it's without a horseshoe nail, you couldn't put the horseshoe on the horse. Without the horse being able to ride, you couldn't have a rider deliver a message. And because the message didn't get there, the battle was lost. And because you lost the battle, you lost the kingdom. All because of a horseshoe nail. The smallest thing caused the biggest catastrophe. I've updated this for today's world. It's because it's all about the data. It's all about data being in an asset that drives a process, that's part of a system, that is inside of an operation, that delivers a service, and without that service, you have no mission. All because of the data. And data can come in many different forms. For some of you, it's going to be the data that's in a person's head. How many of you have had somebody retire after 20 years and you wish you could have all that knowledge back on your plant floor again? Yeah, succession planning is part of what we call cybersecurity now. We're making sure that you have a way to retain as much knowledge from each of your employees as possible. We have, data that's in a computer, of course, data that's on a piece of paper. We have data that resides within different operating systems, data all across the globe, using expertise from other places, other people, different processes. All of that is what we're protecting. And it all starts at the smallest level. because even the smallest bit of data getting out can cause the biggest issue. Sometimes you want to keep data confidential. Sometimes you want data to be available. Sometimes you want data to be right. Sometimes you want all three of those things. After all, isn't that what cybersecurity is? Confidentiality, availability, and integrity, right? Sometimes you have to make a choice between those three. What are you really trying to protect and how are you trying to protect it? Each of your different operating lines, you want to have that discussion with them. Are we trying to keep your data available? Are we trying to keep your data confidential? Are we trying to keep your data correct? That's a difficult decision to have. You're trying to do all three, but sometimes you have to let one slide in order to make the other two possible. So, because this is what the threat actors see. They see that you have a business, that you have a mission. And that mission has people, information, technology, and facilities to make that happen. Those are what we call our 4 asset types. When we think that you're resilient, the way that we measure things at CISA is when we call you resilient is when you know what people have what access to what information using what technology and what facility at all times. Not some of the time, not part of the time, at all times. That's when you're really resilient. That's when you're really secure. Because a threat actor, all they have to do is take one thing away from you. A denial of service attack, a ransomware attack, they can take something away. Something, the smallest things, if they take away your technology. How many of you can do your job without technology? Is there anybody left in this room that can do their job without technology? No, very few jobs these days can be done without technology. Once they take that away, suddenly you don't have an operations. Without operations, you can't deliver a service, and without service, you've lost your mission. The average medium and small-sized business that gets hit with a ransomware attack, 60% of them, I think the last numbers that I saw, never recover, never completely recover. Within 2 to 3 years, they're either bought out, they either go bankrupt, or they just fold completely, all because of the ransomware attack. That's what we're looking at, is because one person took one thing away. And it doesn't have to be technology. It can be a person, it can be information, it can be a facility. You could lose your entire business because of one small thing. That is the world that we live in. This is the threat landscape. Yes, sir.
Another key point is time, how fast.
Oh, yeah.
So when we do incident response, we do like next day planning. We tell people, if you have an attack today, assume you will be tomorrow night to recover. And they're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. But there's 56 minutes. Global company, 56 minutes. Incident ends, the whole country shut down. What do you do if you're not prepared for the next day?
I'll take you one further. How would you even know that you've been attacked? The average threat actor, from the last numbers that I saw, the average threat actor is within your network for 90 to 120 days before they initiate the attack that you can visually see. Before they start shutting stuff down, they're in your network. What could you do with 120 days of access to a company? That's what most organizations don't know. Most organizations don't even know they've been hacked until the threat actors do something that causes an outage or a shutdown or something like that. The threat actors are in there. They could be exfiltrating data. They could be changing data. They could be doing all kinds of things to the network, and you wouldn't know. For companies that they're trying to protect intellectual property, data exfiltration is the scariest thing. But imagine that you're a water company, and the most critical data you have is the pH level or the acidity level or just how clean the water is. And if somebody can manipulate that so that your sensors show that the water is clean, but the water is really not clean, how dangerous is that? How much do we trust the very systems that we interact with on a day-to-day basis? When I used to do penetration testing and stuff like that, one of my favorite things to do, I once got tasked with trying to shut down an operations center, but I wasn't allowed to touch the computers. They tied my hands, said, you can't touch the computers directly, but we want you to shut their servers down. So I got into their industrial control, or I got into their, operations center. So through their HVAC systems, I got into their environmental control systems for the server room. And I set all of their sensors so that they would always read green, that everything was fine in the server room. And then I shut all the air conditioning off. And I let the temperature slowly rise. How many of you know how fast temperature rises in a server room without air conditioning? Yeah, within an hour, the servers were shutting themselves down because they were overheating. And the people kept looking at the screen saying, well, everything shows green, but nobody ever bothered to walk into the server room to see how hot it was getting. The servers just started shutting themselves down. That's what we're looking at, is in today's world, everything is automated, everything is electronic. We can start to see the chain reaction that something like that can have. Poisoning a water system, shutting down a power grid, making US steel a little less resilient than it was the day before. That's what the threat actors are after. It's not always about money, but we're going to talk about that in just a moment. This is today's risk landscape. This has changed a lot over the years, but in the last couple of years, it's stayed pretty steady on this. Although I would say that underneath each of these major headers, a lot of the individual parts underneath have changed quite a bit. We're still, of course, insider threat is still king. And I'm going to show that in just a moment. Insider threat is still your number one threat out there. Almost all cyber attacks start with an insider. Because these days, we don't just have what we used to call malicious insiders. Malicious insiders, of course, are still a bad thing. Those are people who want to do you harm because they're mad at you, they're disgruntled. Those are the things that are happening. But we also have the second tier of insider threat called the inadvertent insider. Those are the people who fall for phishing scams. Those are the people who don't want to follow your cybersecurity policies, or they wanted to find a quick workaround to do something. The number of times that we've gone in to do incident response and we found that somebody has done something to make their job easier, but nobody in IT knew about it. They've interconnected some things, or they set something up some way, and that's what the cause of the whole thing was. There was a major city that had an outage. A cybersecurity attack hit this major city and shut them down for several weeks. And when we went with them, we helped them, we did an investigation. What we found out is that there was one person who decided that they didn't want the firefighters for the city to have to go into the firehouse in order to input their time and attendance. So they allowed them to remote access in on a server or a service that nobody else in IT knew existed, and they used the password 123. Open to the internet, and that's how the threat actors got in, because somebody wanted to make somebody's life convenient so that they didn't have to have people coming. Now, if they'd just gone to IT and said, can we find a solution for this, I'm sure they would have found something. But instead, they just took it upon themselves because they thought it was too slow or it took too much time. That's the kind of thing that we're looking at. I once did an assessment for a hospital, and this hospital had fantastic cybersecurity. I mean, they were a model of what you should be doing up to a point. Because as I started looking around the hospital, I started saying, wow, you guys are doing really well. Do you mind if I go around and start interviewing some of the doctors and some of the people who work here so I can use this as a testament to how other hospitals should do this? And as I started walking around the hospital, I started noticing that doctors were using their phones a lot, and that there were a lot of people that doing things. I was like, wait, what's going on? So when I started talking to the doctors, I was like, hey, I noticed you're using your phone. They're like, oh, our IT department has everything locked down so much that I find it's just a hassle to use it, so I'm doing everything through my phone. So they're sending patient data, taking pictures of their patient, doing all their records through an unsecured device over a cloud service with no security protections whatsoever. Because they made it too hard for them to do their job, they decided to bypass it. That's the insider threat. It's not always somebody looking to do malicious activity, it's somebody looking to do their job. Because as my first mentor used to tell me, a salesperson's got to sell. Meaning that a salesperson will get fired if they don't meet their sales goal, right? Will they get fired if they have a cybersecurity incident? Not at most companies. Most companies will get a slap on the wrist. And yet that one gaffe that they did in order to make that sale, that one way they bypassed, could bankrupt the entire company. That's what we really look at with these, is insider threat. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the next slide, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, because it bleeds into our second area, which is acts of terrorism. We live in a very scary world. We live in a world in which we have been shown that terrorists can attack us not only physically, but they can now also attack us through cyber. They can attempt to do things for us. We used to think that terrorism was other countries' problems, right? And then 9/11 happened and showed that, hey, we can be a target of terrorism too. And now cyber terrorism is just the next evolution of all of that. Them attacking our power grid, them attacking our water supply, the things that they can do through all of that. Cyber attacks, of course, just keep getting more and more complicated. They keep getting more and more advanced, and we can throw artificial intelligence and quantum computing into that mix. Extreme weather. How many of you can say that the weather's been a very stable thing over the last couple of years, right? Hurricanes, tornadoes, heat waves, all of these things, polar ice caps melting. Extreme weather is a real issue, and we're finding it more and more as we look at things, especially become more dependent on power. We're finding it harder and harder to generate that much power, especially with all the extreme weather that's out there. And then, of course, we have pandemics and then accidents or technical failures. I know that all of you have probably had that backhoe that's cut your cable connection at one point or time, right? It's happened to all of us. But let's talk about the threat actors. We've talked about the threats themselves, but let's look at threat actors. And I really want to focus on this first group first, is hacktivism. How many of you have heard of hacktivism? Yeah. Have you heard anything good about them? Because hacktivism is people with a cause, right? How many of you would say that every person that works for your organization, their job is the most important thing in their life? You'd be willing to bet your career that everybody's job is the most important thing to them. More important than their race, more important than their religion, more important than their ideologies, more important than their politics. Think about the polarizing world that we live in right now. Think about, I'm just going to bring this up, think about that there's two nations, say Israel and Palestine, and you've got a worker inside your organization from both sides. You think that they might get mad if somebody is above them that believes in something else and says something publicly, or if the company comes out and supports one side or the other when those people work for you? Do you think they become an insider threat? A lot of the threat actors that we're seeing, the inadvertent threat actors, we see that the social engineering twist is starting to focus on these ideologies for organizations, trying to find people within an organization and hit them in their ideologies in order to make them do things. Trying to, make it say, hey, you support this group, we support that group. Can you give us access to X, or can you help us do Y? And a lot of them think that they're helping further a cause, and that's what they're doing. Then you start to throw in your criminal actors are still there. The insider threat can be along with all of these. But let's talk a little bit about espionage. How many of you would say that espionage is a major issue for the United States? How many of you say espionage is a major issue for everybody outside of the federal government for the United States? Espionage is a big thing. There are countries out there, there are nation states that want access to the things that we have, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to do it. There's been recent reports of, say, an organization or a nation state, especially medium and small-sized businesses. Let's say that I have a processor that is U.S. advanced technology, but we use it a lot here. It's in commercial products and things like that, but it's got a no export rule based on it. We're not allowed to export that to any country that we don't deem friendly because we don't want that technology to fall in their hands. So these nation state actors then find medium and small businesses and say, hey, we want you to develop something, not for us, but for another company, and we want you to put that processor in it. And then we want you to send it through quality control, but it's going to route through our country. So they're trying to find loopholes around extradition or these things in order to get access to this technology, and they're using small and medium-sized businesses to try and do it. They're trying to gain access to companies that have these technologies. They're sending people over in order to work at these companies when they're actually funneling everything back to their particular country. That's what we're looking at for espionage. They're not targeting the federal government anymore. They're targeting private industry. They're targeting critical infrastructure. And a lot of critical infrastructure I talk to say, well, what do we have that they really want? Well, you have methodologies. You have processes. They want to see how a nuclear power plant in the United States works. They want to see how our power grid works. Not just because they can mimic it or they can do something with it, but because so they know how to attack us as well. So they have inside knowledge on what technologies we're using and how they can use that to their advantage. Which brings us to terrorism and warfare, because that's what they want to use that knowledge in order to do. Up to this point in time, there has not been a war started because of a cyber attack, but the last several wars have all started with a cyber attack. You hit them with cyber to take out their communications, their ability to do things. The Ukraine war, the Russians hit them with a cyber attack before boots ever hit the ground. That's the new way to wage war, is you start with a cyber attack. And you can only do that if you have knowledge of how the other organizations, how the other countries, how their other critical infrastructure operate. I'm going to keep walking too close to that thing, I know it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about technical debt. How many of you understand the term technical debt? So technical debt is the accumulation of shortcuts, outdated systems. This is all those things that it's too costly to replace all of these things, or as I like to say, this is how we've always done it. This is how we've always done it is your technical debt. All those legacy systems, all those outdated processes, devices with firmware that you can't update. And when you start to think about it, a lot of people are like, well, we try and update everything. And I'm like, okay, when was the last time you updated your elevator? And people are like, well, I don't think I've ever updated my elevator. It's like, well, is your elevator connected to your network? Well, I don't know. And then they go and look and like, well, wow, my elevator really is connected to my network because somebody has to do remote maintenance on it if they need to. And wow, that firmware is really old. So somebody's hiding out in their elevator systems in order to attack their network. Do you really know what's attached to your network? Have you seen all the devices out there? Environmental control systems, badge access systems, camera systems, robotics, all of your OT systems, your IoT systems. How many of those are your technical debt? How many of those are legacy systems or things that you don't even use anymore? Things that you didn't even know were interconnected? That's what we're talking about here. No encryption at rest, shadow IT systems. How many of you would know if there were shadow IT systems on your network? How many of you scan internally? I know that you know. Shadow IT is one of the biggest issues that we see when it comes to incident response. I'm sure you could attest to this as well. Almost a lot of the incidents that we see come down to shadow IT. A device that's on the network that nobody knew was there, that somebody had put in. It has a backdoor or it has a password that nobody bothered to change. It's still the default password, which is admin, and that's how the threat actors got in. So that's what we're looking at with technical debt. So pop quiz here. The average household has between 26 and 36 devices that are network connected in their house. And I can see all of your eyes suddenly rolling up in your head, starting to think of how many devices you have in your own home. And after you get past 10, you're going to be like, okay, let's just assume it's 26 to 36. When you think about every phone in your house, when you think about every TV that has internet connection, your Nest thermostat, your Ring doorbell, all of your iPads, all of your Xboxes, Switch, PlayStations, you start to see that those number of devices comes up. And you start to think, wow, who's patching all of that stuff? But then let's take it a step further. How many online accounts does the average American have? The average American has 100 accounts. The average American, how many of you have seen those commercials? I think it's a Rockage Mortgage or commercial or something like that saying, hey, did you know you have 2 Netflix accounts or something like that? The average American has 100 accounts, but only about 38 of them are actively in their mind accounts. They signed up for a library account and forgot about it. They signed up for a free trial on something and then forgot about it. But they have all of these accounts out there. And those are all avenues to get into that person or to get information from them. And I'll have a slide later on. You can start to think about the slide later on that says, of these 100 accounts, how many of them have unique passwords? So think about that one until we get down to it. Let's switch gears a little bit. How many of you are prepared for quantum computing? Not a single hand goes up. How many of you even know what quantum computing is? I'm not going to get into that discussion, but quantum computing is the next evolution of computing. It's basically going to make everything, we'll just put it in layman's terms as fast. It's going to make things faster, better, more in-depth. It's going to be a godsend to a lot of different fields out there, especially the medical field. But one of the things about quantum computing is going to do things at such speeds and at such high rate that all of our modern day, or at least up until several years ago, encryption is going to become obsolete. So one of the pushes that we have, one of the things that we've been promoting, I know you guys heard me say it last year, is you need to start looking at every place in your organization that uses encryption, whether that's encryption in transit, encryption at rest, and you need to start saying, is this quantum ready? Because I tell you, it's a race right now, and it's a race between all the countries of the world to see who's going to get quantum computing first. Because I can guarantee you that if another nation state gets it first, they might not let anybody else in the world know about it as they break everybody else's encryption and start to, I was with a company last year, and sorry, every now and then just an idea pops into my head, but I was with a company last year, and we were going through, they had an incident, and a lot of data was exfiltrated. And the CEO of the company and I were sitting there and we were talking, and he's like, I don't understand, because all the data they exfiltrated is all data that is encrypted at rest. And he just couldn't get out of his head why they want to steal all this encrypted data. And I pointed to quantum computing. I say, because they can steal it today and they can break it tomorrow. It doesn't matter. A lot of that data is intellectual property. That data is going to be data that they don't care whether it takes them 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years to break it, but they're going to break it. They're waiting. They're hoping. There are nation states out there stealing as much data as possible, knowing that once they hit the quantum divide, that they're going to be able to start breaking that encryption that you have on there, and then that data is going to all become relevant to them. They don't care that it's encrypted today. They're thinking about it for tomorrow. That's the thing about quantum, is it's going to give whoever develops it first, and in quantum is every day there's new breakthroughs in quantum. It's getting closer and closer to what we'll say is in a steady state, or a state that they can actively put it out to people. I know that the city of Chattanooga is using a lot of quantum encryption and stuff like that, but quantum computing as a whole is really coming around the corner. It's going to be here sooner than we think. So that's your first homework, is to go out there and find out all the encryption you use in your organization and ask the question, are we quantum ready? Sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about that. That's my slide that was supposed to be deleted. So what's that? It was important, but I've been told I'm not allowed to talk about it. So how are you targeted? You notice it doesn't say, are you targeted? It says, how are you targeted? Because this is what the threat actors have figured out. They don't have to attack companies directly anymore. They can attack individuals at company. So although I'm not allowed to talk about artificial intelligence as a whole, I can talk about artificial intelligence in little snippets. And one of the things I can tell you is that the threat actors have embraced artificial intelligence. I got to witness a system recently that a threat actor came up with, that a threat actor can type in the name of an organization. So let's pick a company, ABC, and they can say, I want to attack company ABC. And that's all they have to say to this AI. And this AI will be like, oh, company ABC has 2,700 employees. Those 2,700 employees are stretched out across 17 geographically located sites. Here are their cloud services that they use. Here's their IP range. Here's everything that I know about those companies. Oh, here's their C-suite. Here's everything we know about their C-suite. Here's their C-suite's Facebook page, their Instagram page. Here's everybody that works in a position of interest. Of those 2,700 employees, I think that 57 of those employees are ripe for social engineering. Here's who you're going to target. Here's exactly how you're going to target them. You're not going to target them at their work. You're going to target them in their home, and this is how you're going to do it. What used to take me months and months of recon ability to do for a pen test, they can now do in 10 minutes with an artificial intelligence system, which not only tells them exactly how they're going to attack that organization, it tells them exactly who in that organization they can attack and exactly how to do it. They'll say, hey, Clint Walker really likes the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to get in Clint Walker's good graces, you're going to talk to him about Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going to hit him up on Facebook. You're going to talk about this. You're going to join these groups. Matter of fact, I have bots already set up talking on those groups. You're going to take over one of those bots and actually start to interface with him. And then you're going to invite him over here. You're going to get him on LinkedIn. And then you're going to get him to give you what you need to know on this. That's how easy it has gotten. How many of you heard about the MGM hack last year? Yeah. The MGM hack was something very similar to that. The threat actor actually just got on LinkedIn and claimed that he worked for MGM. He started socializing with all the people who worked for MGM, and he asked one of them saying, hey, my account is acting up. Who should I contact at MGM in order to get my account created or my account taken care of? And they said, oh, you need to contact this person. He goes, oh, what information should I have ready when I contact that person? They're like, oh, here's all the questions they're going to ask you. Here's how you should answer if you want the fastest, access possible, if you want them to take care of you. So that person called up everybody on the MGM, on his LinkedIn, vouched for him to the company. So they created an account for the guy and got him network access. And that's how he actually got in and attacked him. Completely social engineered, all through LinkedIn. How many of you have ever looked for your own company's name to see everybody who claims they work for your company? How many of you say that everybody on that list actually works for your company? There's a lot of imposters out there. I actually once was working with an executive, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I don't even have a Facebook account. I don't have a LinkedIn account. He's like, because I want to protect myself. And I said, well, if you don't have an account for yourself, somebody has an account on your behalf. So he went out there and he looked, and sure and behold, using his picture, his information, somebody was impersonating him and actually interfacing with his own staff and trying to get them to send him gift cards and things like that based on his LinkedIn account that he didn't even have. If you don't own your own persona, somebody else owns it for you, and they're using it to their advantage. And these are all the different ways that they're doing it. That's a whole lot of ground to cover. There's a whole new discipline coming out. I'm finding more and more high-level companies are moving with what they call executive protection. So they've always had executive protection, like armed people who will walk around and bodyguard for their high-level execs, but now they have cyber executive protection, where they're going around and bulletproofing all of their social media and their entire online presence in order to protect their C-suite from cyber impersonation and cyber defamation. It's a growing industry as we talk. So, we've already kind of talked about all of this stuff. Oh, SIM swapping, I won't even get into that. You've all read The Art of War, right? I'm not the only really geeky person in here, am I? So if you haven't read The Art of War, I do highly suggest the book. It has a lot of good info, but this is just one of those things. If you know your enemy and yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. When you look at this from a corporate standpoint, I ask every corporation that I go to talk to, every time I walk in, I look at them, I say, who are you? And a lot of them, it's the way that I say who are you might be like, do you have a network diagram? Do you have a data flow diagram? Do you know what you look like from a hacker's perspective? Most organizations can't answer any of those questions. They give me a network diagram, but the very first thing that comes out of their mouth, what's the first thing they say when they hand you a network diagram? It's not accurate. So that means if you have a network diagram that's not accurate or not up to date, that means that you're making business decisions on an outdated document. If your troop movements aren't in the right place, you don't have your artillery set up the right way, how are you building a battle plan if you don't know where your assets are? If you don't even know what your assets you're supposed to be protecting? That's what we're currently looking at. If you don't know yourself, and most organizations don't know themselves, they don't know what they're trying to protect or how they're trying to protect it. So that's what you need to take out of this slide. And the other side of that is once you know yourself, you need to know the threat actors out there. That's where you come in as a community. You need to be talking with each other. You need to have some sort of intelligence. CISA, we send out alerts and advisories all the time. We're trying to give you updates, trying to let you know what the threat actors are doing. We're trying to give you that intelligence. But there's other companies out there that do it as well. Or just talk to each other about what you're seeing, how you're seeing the bad guys out there. What threats are there to your specific industry, to your specific area? Because this is the mechanics of a cyber attack. There's going to be some sort of external reconnaissance. This used to take months and months of time, but now a threat actor can do it, as I said, with using AI, they can do it within minutes. We have literally seen evidence where somebody, a CEO of a company, has said something in front of a news camera or was quoted in a newspaper or a news article somewhere, and within 10 minutes, we can already see the hacktivists or the nation states targeting that particular entity. Do you know how fast it was once we went to war with a nation state that nation state's threat actors started targeting our critical infrastructure? They didn't have to wait 2 or 3 months on this reconnaissance period. They already had the data ready to go. And then that initial compromise, whether it be through an insider, whether it be through an actual exploit, a zero-day vulnerability. We see very few zero-day vulnerabilities. We mostly see things that are on our KEV list or the known exploitable exploitations and vulnerability list. Things that have had a patch for years, that's how the threat actors are getting in. Then they're going to escalate permissions. They're going to move laterally through your network. This is the area here where they're taking 90 to 120 days, moving laterally through your network, trying to find out where everything is, how everything works, and then they're going to complete their mission. Sometimes that mission is going to be data exfiltration. Sometimes that mission is going to be denying you an asset, such as a ransomware attack or denial of service attack. And sometimes their mission is just to sit in your network and change data, to manipulate the data to their advantage. Maybe it's to make your particular product not as good as it should be, or to delay your production lines as much as possible. If you go back to the Stuxnet virus that was used against, the Iranians back in the day, Stuxnet was not designed to destroy their capabilities to enrich uranium. It was designed to slow them down. The reason being is if it destroyed them, they could just build new ones and be back up and operational. But if you slowed them down, they might not never know something was wrong. And if you degraded it enough, you could have kept slowing them down more and more over time so that they would never reach their goal. This is a tactic we see a lot of nation states using, is they want to get into networks, they want to get in to degrade the networks or to degrade the service to slow down production. Maybe you could have built 100 cars that day, but instead you only built 99. They can keep degrading you over time or making something less durable. We don't need to look at that. And they're not doing it just to you. They're looking at your entire supply chain. This is technically called island hopping. I used to call it the Kevin Bacon attack, because I would never attack you directly. I would look at who all you did business with, who was the smallest company that you did business with, because I knew they didn't have as good a cybersecurity group. So I would attack them, and then I would use their systems to attack somebody else. This company here probably has direct connection to multiple other companies. If you look at the Target hack several years ago, Target was not hacked directly. Target was hacked through their HVAC company. Somebody got into their HVAC vendor. Their HVAC vendor had a direct connection in order to do maintenance of their HVAC system. And then they used that network, because it was a trusted network, to then move over. If you have a trusted connection with one of your suppliers or one of your vendors, if I get into their network, guess what? I now have a straight line over to your network, and you consider me trusted traffic, and I can do whatever I want. That's what the threat actors are looking at. They're looking at how can I get into your network and I don't have to attack you directly. I can go through some of your intermediaries. I can look at your supply chains. One of the things that they're really looking at doing, especially these nation states, is they're looking at getting something into your supplier. So let's say that I want to get into one of these big companies. I can actually start working with a small or medium-sized business and say, hey, I want you, we're gonna help you win the bid to start developing something for company over here, but we want you to embed some of our code into it, or we're gonna help you develop that code, or we're gonna put a back door in. And so everything that you're distributing or that you're giving over to here is gonna have a back door so they can get into every other company. There's a major sting a couple of years ago from the FBI where they took down one of the largest point of sale vendors in Jacksonville, Florida, because they found that they were putting back doors into all their point of sale systems in order to allow a nation state access. Imagine a point of sale system. So we're talking about all of these places across the country that have these point of sale systems that they now have back doors into their main network. All right. So your other homework, I'm going to show you all these typhoons. I only have 5 minutes left, but there's lots of typhoons out there. So Volt Typhoon, this is a nation state that's focusing on critical U.S. infrastructure, communications, energy, transportation. If you want to read up on Salt Typhoon, they're going after telecommunications and internet service providers. If you want to read about Flax Typhoon, this one currently is only targeting Taiwan, but you might see it, but this is actually going after critical manufacturing. So I think that Taiwan is their test bed. You might start to see this bleed out to the rest of the world as well. And then, of course, you've got Brass Typhoon, and this is a lot of the injecting malicious code into legitimate software supply chain. So that last one that I talked about is your Brass Typhoon. So there's a lot of different typhoons out there. These are your threat actors. These are the nation states. These are the state-sponsored groups that are coming after you. So we can talk about that. Like I said, I have a lot of slides because I didn't know where the conversation was going to take us. I just wanted to point this one out real quick because a lot of people, when we talk about threats to critical infrastructure, we talk about the number of incidents or the ransomware incident that we've seen. If you look at this chart, most people think, oh, if I said who's the number one target for ransomware, a lot of people would say they thought it was, information technology or financial services. But look over here at 258, that's critical manufacturing. I know you can't read that down there, but that really big bar, that's critical manufacturing, is the number one target for ransomware attacks. So blah, blah, blah. Are we there yet? It's not all doom and gloom. This is the part where I say, my name is Klint Walker. I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help. We are here to help you build resiliency. So we don't do that in a vacuum. We really want to get to know you. I'm not just up here giving lip service to that either. My team really wants to come out and start working with you. Joe Parker is my person in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm getting ready to put a cybersecurity coordinator in Nashville, Tennessee. We really want to get to know you. I've got a large team. I've got people all over my region that can come out and start assisting you. We want to be able to turn those clouds into the silver lining that you see and to start working with you. We want to collaborate with you. One of the ways that we've done this, and I know that I started talking about this as a pilot program last year, but we do what we call pre-ransomware notifications, or PRNIs for short. I'm going to flip to the next slide here because I want you to look down here. Within the last 2 years, or I guess now 4 years, we've done 4,768 pre-ransomware notifications and have prevented $10.5 billion in damages. What this is we have a community set up. So we work with the intelligence community, and not just the federal intelligence community. We're working with private sector intelligence communities as well as national intelligence communities from other countries, where if they see something, so like if they see an IP address beaconing out to something that they're monitoring, they contact us at CISA and they say, hey, we think that there's a threat actor already inside this network. Can you call them up and let them know? So this is where my team, we pick up a phone and we call you and say, my name is Klint Walker, I'm with the federal government. We think you have a situation. We need to talk to you in an out-of-band resource because we don't want to send an email to your company email where the threat actors might be able to see it or understand that you're working with us. So we're going to talk to you in an out-of-band method, but we're going to identify ourselves. You can always call your local FBI office or you can call us up at CISA Central and say, can you validate that Klint is who he says he is? And they'll be like, yes, Klint Walker is who he says he is, and he is trying to actively notify you about a PRNI. Where we'll say, hey, I've got intelligence and I've got threat indicators to say that you have a compromised computer on your network. If we act now, we can get it off your network. And we will work with you from start to finish to make sure that that thing is taken down or that it's either proved to be a false positive or a false negative. So that is one of the big things that we've done. And I will tell you that a lot of these things of these 4,768, the very first thing I get when I call them is hung up on. A lot of times it takes me calling their partners or calling somebody else to say, hey, can you please get me in touch? Can you please vouch that I am who I say I am so that they will actually work with me? This is imminent because literally sometimes within these cases, I've actually literally started talking to the person as we saw the threat actor start to pull the string to initiate the ransomware attack. So the second part of this is what we call our vulnerability warning pilot. This is the next stage. Now we're taking it one step further where we're saying, hey, if we see that you have a vulnerability, so during the scans that are performed not by us, but by third parties, if they see that you have a vulnerability based on some of the internet scans that they have, and they let us know, and it identifies as something on the KEV list, meaning that there's a known threat actor out there exploiting it right now, we will call you to say, hey, were you aware that you have something that threat actors are currently exploiting that is facing the internet? Do you want our assistance in helping you take care of that? Is there any way you can patch it, or are there other remediation efforts? So this is the new thing that we're doing too, is we're notifying you to let you know that you have something visible to the internet that makes the threat actors very, very happy. So other than that though, we also want to build partnerships with you. We want to be that rising sun for you. You guys all know about updating software and all this fun stuff. But we want to come out and do tabletop exercise with you. If you take nothing else away from this thing, please let us know that we can do a tabletop exercise with you. That is the single best thing you can do for your organization, is to sit all of your decision makers down and walk them through a really bad day. And I tell you, I'll come up with a scenario that'll make it a really bad day. I've seen an awful lot. And everybody usually tells me, oh, we like our incident response plan, until they sit down with me and then they're like, we don't really like our incident response plan. So here's that second pop quiz, just really fast. How many unique passwords are used for those accounts? Anybody want to guess? Yep, 8, and the same password for 12 of those. So if you have 100 accounts and you only have 8 passwords.
So having worked for state and local government, they've had to be careful. I think the most important piece of information is how do they
how do people get in touch with you?
So you can go to our website, but if we fast forward through all this other fun stuff. So everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face? Yeah. That's me. I get called at 2 o'clock in the morning. I get called at 3 o'clock in the morning. I get called on my lunch breaks. I don't sleep so that you can. Literally, I have been up, so I got up at 5 o'clock this morning so I could drive from Atlanta in order to come out and talk to all of you today. As soon as I get off this stage, I'm going to jump in my car. I'll be back down in Atlanta because I have to be in the Network Operations Center for the FIFA World Cup until 1 a.m. And then I have to be back up and back to the Operations Center at 9 a.m. to go again until 1 a.m. and then do the same thing on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. So that is our role, is to be there for you. If you send me an email or if you give me a text or if you call me, you can also hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm not allowed to really officially say that. I will respond to you and get you in touch with one of my team members, and they will start taking care of you from there. If you're ever not getting the response from us, and we do more than just cybersecurity too, we have physical security team members. So we have what we call our protected security advisors. We also have our emergency communications specialists. We have so many services, and we are here to assist you. So once again, my name is Klint Walker. I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help. Thank you all so much. Questions?
I got a question over here. Here you go.
Is it how awesome am I?
Oh, that's
a
a great talk. Thanks so much. So you said let's say the IT department is trying to tell the upper management, hey, we need to secure these machines, and upper management may not be listening or say, well, we don't need to do that. Are you saying they can contact you and you'll talk with upper management, say, hey, this is really important?
Yes. That's one of the things that we do is I get with IT directors all the time and I tell them, look, I'm not going to say anything different than you're saying. I'm just going to say it on behalf of the federal government. They're probably going to listen to me. Matter of fact, I will usually sit down with you and say, exactly what do you want me to say? One of the best assessments we have is what we call the Cyber Resilience Review. At least I'm hoping they let us keep this assessment. It's on the fence right now whether they're going to let us keep it or not. But it's an 8-hour assessment. It goes through all 10 domains of cybersecurity. And it is the best look at your resiliency across all of your operating lines that there is. I absolutely love this assessment. And usually when we brief the results of that assessment to upper management, they start to look at you with a totally different, mindset, saying, wow, we didn't realize how far behind we were the curve. They're making business decisions. They're making operational decisions based on a feeling of security that just isn't there. One of the first things I teach a lot of CISOs when I talk to them is like, how often do you talk to your board of directors? How often do you talk to your C-suite? A lot of them say, I usually get one time a year that I can talk to them. And I get to show them the state of the cybersecurity program, and I get one shot to do that. And I'm like, well, that's your problem right there, is you only get one shot, because they think of cybersecurity as one program. Cybersecurity is actually 10 separate programs. Asset management, situational awareness, vulnerability management, incident response. When you start to break down, if you start briefing them on each aspect of cybersecurity independent and stop saying this is how we look about cybersecurity across the board, but start to show them how each program operates independent of everything else, they start to say, wow, that's a whole lot of stuff that is cybersecurity coverage. It's like, yeah. And we're green in incident response, but we're red in asset management, which means we're going to be leaning on our incident response a whole lot because we don't even understand where all of our assets are. When you start to pitch it to them like that, they start to understand a little bit more about how much is on your plate and about how insecure they really are. And they start to make different decisions. Their risk tolerance level really changes. And we can come in and help you with all of that. We can help you figure out how you want to talk to your C-suite, because every C-suite's different. They want to be talked to differently, but we can help you determine that. That's a lot of where our expertise is. Almost everybody on my team has been a CISO before. And so we can smell our own. And so, we understand the vulnerabilities that you have. We understand that you have limited resources, you have limited budget, you have limited ability to actually, enact your will upon your organization. And we can help you with all of that.
Thank you so much, Clint. We'll have
All right, well, good morning. My name's Slade. I am the moderator for this session, and I'm going to take just a minute to frame what we're going to talk about. I'm with Contextual Security. We're a risk and compliance advisory security services firm out of Knoxville, serving customers all over the nation. And we're going to talk today with this great panel we have, and I'll introduce them here in just a minute, about a trilemma. So Diane talked about that, Denise talked about that, and we're going to talk about, you know, what are some of these difficult things that we have to decide between? And sometimes there's an unfavorable option in there. And you've heard before, everybody's heard, if you have to pick something, is it going to be cheap, fast, or good? You know, pick two of those. And we kind of make a joke about that, but sometimes that's a reality. And in this one, we're looking for a different one. So we're looking at security. You know, can we have cybersecurity? Can we have that ability to trust what's going on? Can we have uptime? Can we have that availability that everybody wants all the time? And then can we have what we'll call future connectivity? So are we going to be able to use future things to do this? Because we talked about stuff being decades old at this point, and some of that wasn't. It was great engineering. It lasts forever. But at the same time, it doesn't scale in the modern workplace, or it doesn't work for what we want it to do today. And the tension that comes out of that for these organizations is going to be different for each one of them, and that's why they're all here to present their perspective on it. But if you prioritize absolute security, you may sacrifice agility and speed and definitely future connectivity. Security is not too hard, right? Just unplug it and we're good to go. Everybody can do that where you work, right? No, you can't. Psalm 116:11, by the way, says all men are liars. So we're going to experience that a little bit together today. It sounds like they all nodded immediately when I said that. If you, you're gonna start lying now? No, I didn't know. Oh, women don't lie. Actually, that word was descendants. So yeah, it works both ways. But I appreciate you trying to get out of it on the gender language. If you prioritize your future connectivity and you just feed everything to AI, well, there's also some danger there, right? And if you don't think agentic AI is going to be involved in control systems, I just left another conference where Microsoft's building it. Get ready for it. Get ready to what data are you going to feed it? Do you know your data communication paths? So the outdated network map. That isn't going to work with this stuff. You got to know where data is going and what it's going to do. And you don't want to introduce new vulnerabilities that threaten uptime and safety. Uptime is just, I mean, for Volkswagen, oh my goodness, I can't imagine what that would look like. So what? Eric said it's a little bit important.
A little bit.
So the business wants connectivity, operations wants uptime, and security wants to reduce risk. And we ought to figure out how to walk through this together. And the challenge is that those goals don't always move in the exact same direction. So let me read these introductions real quick, and we're going to go with Eric first. So Eric's on the back right for us. So our first panelist sits at one of the most complex I'm going to read this, by the way. I learned I was the moderator just about 30 hours ago, 40 hours ago. So we're going to learn this together, okay? It's like band practice, so thanks for hanging out with me. But Eric sits at one of the most complex intersections in manufacturing cybersecurity. It's global manufacturer with a traditional assembly plant, but scaling things like EV production now, managing connected vehicle platform where the product itself is a network endpoint. Who would have thought when you bought your first car that it was going to be a network endpoint in the future? I mean, I can't imagine. So if somebody had the foresight to think of that, that's amazing. But that, to me, we just live in the future. Also very old, though. So I'm easily impressed. Eric is the CISO and Director of Cybersecurity for Volkswagen Group of America and the entire North American region, a scope that covers the Chattanooga plant, assembling the Atlas and the ID4, as well as the full North American enterprise across IT, OT, and connected vehicle infrastructure. His career spans AT&T, Federal Systems work, supporting the ATF and some other acronyms that are in here. I don't mean to diminish those. I'm just trying to get through it. And progressive security leadership within Volkswagen across product-related IT security, connected vehicle, and Industry 4.0. He holds a master's degree from Virginia Tech, and he's a Chattanooga community member, which means this region's competitiveness is personal to him. Join me in welcoming Eric to the panel. Thanks for being here. We're going in order of importance. Is that how you pick this? No, I'm just kidding. Everybody's reverse. We'll see. I'm last, so that's how I figured that. Paul, Trakian, Senior Manager of Cybersecurity, Operations, and Incident Response for the Tennessee Valley Authority. Incident Response at TVA. A little bit of responsibility there. If you want to understand what's truly at stake when critical infrastructure networks fail, you ask someone who defends those networks at scale. And TVA definitely does that. I've worked with TVA in the past. I was just reminding Paul, I met him years ago when he and his brother were in opposite rooms. And I meet Stephen Trakian in one room. I walk in the other. There's Paul Trakian. I'm like, wait a minute.
It's a small family business.
Yeah. I was like, that can't be common. I guess you have to be named Trakian to work here. Is it not true though, right?
No.
Yeah. Lots of other people work there.
Yeah,
So their definition of uptime means the lights here stay on in 7 states. It's a little bit of responsibility with that position right there. He's the senior manager, like I said. So it's one of the nation's largest public power companies operating a fleet spanning nuclear, hydro, natural gas, solar. Am I missing anything there in your generation?
Some things that.
You got any wind?
Battery storage.
Storage.
Sure,
All right. So now, we're doing that. And he serves industrial customers across the Tennessee Valley, many of whom are in this room. His effort puts him at the front line of protecting OT environments where the standard IT playbook doesn't apply. You can't patch a running turbine the way you patch a laptop. And taking a system offline isn't always an option when it affects hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses. Welcome, Paul, with me. Next to Paul, we have Brittany Day. You are the IT business manager at Colonial Chemical, local company here. I think we were commiserating about being the little guys on stage. So you have a little different resources. So 150 to 200 people there, and then global billions on the back row back here, and then TVA and Eaton, obviously. And we're sitting here like, wow, that's a different scale of production and protection. So we heard this morning from a federal agency, some major utilities here, a big production, and oh boy, this is not right. So I'm going to skip some of this, okay? Because we had to change the itinerary just a little bit here, the agenda. So what do you focus on most of the time? Brittany, I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit here because this is a little bit off.
Oh, hey, I run the IT department for an international chemical company, and it's brought a world of differences and huge opportunities, like building IT infrastructures in Saudi Arabia, but doing it from Chattanooga. Pro tip, language is not the only barrier there, but it's all about cybersecurity and accessibility on the plant floor.
Yeah. And one of the things it has in here is that, you're a specialty chemical manufacturer, and you have to do, regulation is part of what you have to do, safety, critical in an environment where safety is paramount. And then your networks connect both business systems and production processes. I would argue almost everyone's do that just based on my experience as a pen tester. Every time somebody tells me there's an air gap, I find that there might have been, but there wasn't anymore. And this is where it's not just an IT problem for you if there's a cybersecurity problem. Yours crosses the boundary into safety really quickly, especially with the chemical manufacturing. So Brittany navigates the IT-OT boundary that the rest of us talk about theoretically every single day. So she really has to do it day to day. And her perspective is the one that may resonate most directly with most people. Just again, being the little guy in the room, we don't all get to work for giant companies or enterprise operations, and she'll have a unique perspective on that. So because her challenges are your challenges, welcome Brittany with me. All right, these other 3 are defending connected things, and Stephen is building them. So he's a certified machinery safety expert, Industry 4.0 digital factory engineer at Eaton, a global power management company whose products sit inside the factories, substation, and facilities that the rest of this panel is trying to secure. So I guess you're the fall guy today, it sounds like. It sounds like we're going to blame you when things go wrong. Not true. Stephen works at the design layer of smart manufacturing, integrating connected systems, digital controls, and the Industry 4.0 architecture into production environments. This is an inside-out perspective. So we get this unique perspective from Stephen at Eaton. So he'll be building connectivity while understanding the security implications of every design decision. And this is what makes his voice on the panel pretty distinct. So welcome Stephen with me. Okay, you're all ready to answer, right? So we're going to let you answer as you want at first, and then if you're just quiet and stare at me, I'll call on one of you, okay? A little bit about me, if we do ask questions and people just stare at me, I do lead the biblical counseling team at my church, so I'm super comfortable in an awkward silence, all right? I used to teach high school, so if you just sit and look at me, I will sit and look at you until we get something going back and forth here. All right, so this first section here is strategic and framing kind of questions. And we're going to start with, manufacturing is becoming increasingly connected. Obviously, day to day, that's just changing rapidly. We've got cars as network endpoints now. It's mind-boggling. What cybersecurity risks concern you most today, and how have those risks evolved over the last 5 years? So what concerns you most today, and how has that changed in the last 5 years? Maybe there was something else 5 years ago that wasn't quite on the radar, but is now.
So, go ahead.
Very easy. Everything is converging to the cloud. It's not sitting in your factory anymore. And so your data there is no edge. The edge does not exist. That's how I would summarize that.
Yeah, the loss of the perimeter is very interesting, isn't it? And not only for the car being the endpoint, but just in enterprise IT in general, not even in manufacturing.
For where your data is stored.
Yeah.
There is no edge. So.
And this is where Brittany may have a unique perspective, because being smaller, more agile, she may actually know where her data is stored.
I do. I
yeah,
do know
right.
where all of it's stored.
The bigger you get, the harder it is to define those boundaries and where they are.
We know where it's at. It's just hard to keep track of.
I believe you. Brittany, you were going to say something to
So just 5 years ago, all I had to do when we were putting in a new PLC was to create some VLAN for network segmentation and make sure everyone had MFA. But now everything needs read-write access to your manufacturing software, your enterprise software, your cloud. And so when someone like, Rockwell Automation comes out with a vulnerability, then it ruins that whole day, which just happened in April, by the way. So suddenly it's not just your plant floor, it's all of your everythings that are being impacted, which is the bad.
the bad. I
It's
like that.
the bad,
Okay,
not bad, the
may
bad.
actually make a T-shirt out of that. It's the bad.
It's the bad.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, I really like what both of you guys are bringing forward, because we really have to live in a supposedly zero trust that no device supports. So a lot of the frameworks that people are pushing down on us do not make sense for some of the facilities we're trying to apply them to. So whether it be maybe it is a PLC or a relay in our case or something similar, these are appliances. They can't install whatever agent is supposed to be applied on this thing to protect it, right? And so I think that the attack surface has expanded because of the need for cloud, because management pushes efficiency down on us. And then we also have to have the risk of the classification of that data is somehow more complex now. So when you're looking at a drawing that shows here's how your different devices are connected, in the past, we would keep that on an internal share drive, and very few people had access to it. Now it's on SharePoint, right? And everyone has access to it. So I think everything from paradigms that are accepted as the next step that don't apply to the data classification itself are two things I think have changed very quickly in the last few years.
Yeah, some fun moments I heard in that were, executives asking for things. So you build all these great networks, and then some board member or some real senior executive is like, I want to see the output of this production run on my iPad at home or on the plane. And now, so this is how air gaps go away, by the way, because you have to export that data out somehow and get it onto someone's iPad, and it's coming directly off the plant floor or off of a device. Stephen, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I would say that what I see is more the vulnerability of the human element with AI. I see a lot of us wanting to use these more advanced tools without understanding how that data is managed, where that data is managed, and stuff like that. So I see a risk from the expansion of the risk at the human element. It was just passwords and don't click on the phishing email. Now it's don't upload your stuff to a random AI chat bot to be able to summarize your meeting notes or your production report at the end of the day, and just kind of help us kind of align better with, train our employees in this new environment with AI to say, hey, pay attention. It's not just phishing and doing your emails anymore. It's also these tools themselves are collecting and storing your information now.
So could I ask a question of the crowd? How many people have engineering that is at least partially remote, like can work from home? Okay, that's the other thing I would mention that was not something we had engineered into our designs. COVID changed security. It allowed people to do some of these access. We never had these remote access holes punched in our security until COVID forced us. And now we're seeing a great reluctance to come back. Now, you know, a lot of us have been, and I'm sure you guys as well, like the operating side of it has went back immediately. You can't do these things from home, right? But the engineering side, some of the design side hasn't. And now that they've tasted the good life, recruiting is hard and everything else to pull people back in. So we're seeing a lot of pressure on this exposed surface area of having those particularly, you know, like high profile designs and everything else has to be cloud native now. So
Yes, it does.
Thanks,
Shocker,
everyone.
nobody wants to go to work. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah,
not wearing pants. Yeah, sure.
I have to double check every time now. So I've worked at home for almost 20 years now, and
It's called the business mullet, right?
correct.
Just
Business
button down
mullet.
and then, yeah.
How many people have a shirt hanging in a home office somewhere you can throw on for a meeting? Yeah, the rest of you are lying. I know you do. I know you do. Okay. Great answers. Heard multi-factor authentication thrown out there a couple of times. Obviously, there's great workarounds for that now where you can interact. And you know, if you want to look at a tool called like RealFish, it's made specifically to bypass things like MFA, and token guessing has been around. There's a super old hacker tool called Cain Enable, and it was able to guess RSA secure IDs, 15 years ago. It's always interesting when we start relying on a certain layer of security. All right, next question. As organizations balance security, scalability, and operational uptime, how do you determine where to invest cybersecurity resources for the greatest impact?
I want to hear Eric's.
Basics first. So we're talking about manufacturing. You have to know what assets are on that network, 100%. And in today's world, there's a lot of vendors that come in third party into your plant floor, and they want to put things like vending machines for gloves or safety equipment. You have logistics companies that come in with IoT devices on their pallets and all their tracking, and they say, hey, can I hop on your network? Can I hop on your network?
Sure.
And that's probably your biggest area of defense, is actually knowing what you have. So we've invested heavily in asset management and asset control, what goes on our networks. We have a very robust process. If you want to touch one of our networks, you have to meet our requirements. We don't meet yours. And so that's one of the things we've invested heavily on to prevent unknown things just showing up. And of course, when something unknown shows up, you can just extrapolate what could happen from there. So
that's excellent. And I can't tell you how many times we've seen doing risk assessments or penetration tests where it's a vendor account that has privileges it doesn't need. And before Server 2019, I don't know if anybody knew this, and if you're using Windows as your authentication mechanism, if you had a privileged account, your password policy didn't apply. So if you were an enterprise admin, for example, you did not have to have the 8-character account or the 12-character account. You could actually make a 6-character password, and lots of vendors did. Anybody else where you invest in your cybersecurity resources? How are you making that decision?
I think a good one for us is one. I'm jealous that you have asset inventory. It's a constantly moving target. We pay a lot of money to certain vendors to get that 80% right. But besides that, it's kind of a risk register, right? So like, how much of an impact is it going to have? We have limited budget, limited people, so we have to look at these high value assets that we have, protect them in a certain way, and if we can, trickle down and pick. And the challenge with that is we have an intel team that'll come by and say, here's the different kind of attacks that are happening. Ransomware, big deal, right? It's been happening everywhere. We had 3 LPCs popped in 3 months with the same ransomware. So we had to actually take some of the money and time we're spending on defending ourselves, according to the risk register that we have, and spend it communicating with the local power companies to say, here's what's happening, here's how they get you. Let me give you a quick example, and I hand it up to the rest of them. There was a user who clicked on a SharePoint link. Within 8 minutes, his token had been stolen. Someone was clicking around on the web page, looking at all his email. And they didn't just click on randomly. They knew exactly where to go for the cloud admin panel to go and see, did he have that role where he could actually change things, right? Could he go in and send emails to other people? It's within 8 minutes, right? That's super fast. So a lot of these things that are happening, they're kind of trying to pick off your suppliers, right? Talk about Volkswagen. They have this enormous plant. I bet their security is really good. But I bet some of the ones that are outside of them, the smaller shops, they do not have the resources to support those kind of things. So when we looked at our risk register as a way to prioritize where we're putting our funds, make sure you don't leave out some of your partners and provide them pro bono help of this is where we see things happening. Because we have an Intel team, maybe they don't. So provide those resources in a way that doesn't compromise your own processes, but still allows you to be protected from your external.
Yeah. So Brittany, he's talking about resources. Paul's talking about resources. Eric's got different resources. Eaton has different resources than you. You might have a few less than these giant companies. So how do you prioritize this?
You know, the deeper you get into this conversation, the more expensive it gets. So you start with your self-healing rings and your paired PLCs, but somewhere around fraud resistant SCADA servers, you have to start deciding what endpoints you're going to secure and do it well. And so you got to get safety, you have to get operations in the room, and you have to have your CFO in the room. And it's starting to become a math problem. What is the cost of downtime? Is it a safety risk? Is it a financial risk? And then the real goal is making sure that management is part of that decision. It shouldn't be an IT call. It should be a business decision. We've decided we understand this risk and we are going to accept this risk.
That is great. One of the things we've realized we've had to shift doing is we can't just be doing things from the hacker perspective anymore. We have to do things from the financial downtime aspect. So we actually quantify, if you're doing a tabletop with us, for example, we quantify it financially as the tabletop goes on. And that gets CFOs finally are like, you know what? Eric does need that budget that he put out there. Brittany does need that budget that they put out there because they can see, and that Klint talked about it as well in his opening.
TVA doesn't need it.
Just
No.
Brittany and Eric.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
best I can.
Yeah, well, TVA, who's going to, your customers aren't leaving, man.
I don't know. MOTW in Memphis really tried here.
Listen,
recently.
I know they try.
You know, then they got a board member. So
About 50% of our clients are electric co-ops, and we always tell them the reputation risk is a little different for you than it is for, say, the law firms and the manufacturers and things like that. But doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you don't care. I've seen the TVA team at work before, and they definitely work hard to do that. I'm going to move into the operational and actionable stuff here, and this will be probably more on your lines as you're developing this stuff, Stephen. But how many manufacturers operate a mix of legacy equipment and modern connected systems? That doesn't sound familiar to anybody, I'm sure. What practical steps can they take to improve OT ICS security without disrupting production? So, Stephen, you're building these things.
So what I would say is, based off what Eric was just mentioning, know your inventory, know what assets you have on your network. And if you're at the point of trying to determine, hey, what do I need to do? Critical assets are a good place to start, but passive network monitoring, if you're not doing anything, just monitor your network. Make sure that you know what's there and how it's communicating, what it's communicating to. If you don't know those things, then you're pretty much just taking a shot in the dark of what you're trying to tackle and what you're trying to protect.
That is great. Just capturing network flows, by the way, TCP streams, outbound data exfiltration. Your HR people probably don't need to ever use SSH outbound, for example. That has been one of my favorite things in the world in my 25 years of doing penetration testing. That's great advice. What else?
I will mention that we have an overbuilt power grid. It was built back in the 70s, and it's actually did really well for the next 50 years. And then AI came and literally blew things up. And so having those different generations of relays that we do not go in and update even firmware or change out. You have to live in this world of accepted risk for some of this. Completely agree that when it comes to the field assets, we walk them down once a year to make sure we know what we have and what level it's at. But a multi-vendor situation is difficult, right? So whether you have, on our side, you may have Allen Bradley PLCs over here at this substation. You may have Siemens over here in Cybertech. You may have 4 different vendors for relays of different generations that are older that do not support certain protocols, right? So they may not have even a network stack on them. They may be purely serial, right? So what you have to have is a flexible security environment. And that starts with talk to your SMEs. So a lot of times I think there's that guy who's been working on this station. He knows everything about that station. No matter what your drawings say about it, this is the reality. So in our space, we have installed things that help us on layer 2 and seeing what's on there, something gets added. But realistically, if you get to the person first, they'll give you the best information about that particular location. So we have an actual outreach organization that is part of cyber, and it's their full-time job to just be there. So a station gets cut in, we'll have nuclear refueling outages at Sequoia, great time to go by and just, kind of talk to people. They can't touch their equipment. They brought in a bunch of contractors to swap things out. So right now, it's a great time, right, to go talk to them and say, like, hey, what's new? What are you guys working on? So for us, it is a people component is the only way we can kind of get around this multi-generational, multi-decade setup we have.
That's good. So I'm going to go back to some things you said here about on the floor. And I think anyone that works in a manufacturing floor knows that you have physical equipment. Like we have presses for metal presses, right? These things have a 25 to 35 year lifespan. The IT component that came with it is nothing in cost, but it controls the whole unit. Well, that's probably running Windows 3.1 still. And it works. It works fine. So you'll never go into a boardroom and say you need to replace your $30 million press because the Windows device that controls it is a risk to me. So, this is all over the world, not just here in Chattanooga, but what we do with that, of course, is we have islands. We segmentate like crazy. And when you're mentioning SSH or other just random ports that are open, those are turned off we turn them off. Just turn them off. If you tell us what you need, that's what you get, not the other way around. Turn everything on and we'll see what we use.
Please take notes on that. That's so great.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
So that's one way we prevent that blast radius, or if something does happen, it's segmented off. It's need to know principle, need to talk principle. And that's how we sort of prevent that, because you're never going to prevent everything. It's more about limiting when something does happen. How do you respond to it?
Don't trust vendors based on your own equipment. So
100%.
if you have someone who understands Nmap or something else, they will say that they have turned this thing off. They probably have not. Yeah. So
Hey, I believe you, Stephen, when you say you do it. Okay. I love the way both of these guys immediately transfer the risk back to the vendor. That was great, which is also something you got to do in your position. Yeah. You do have to accept certain risks sometime and say, hey, that one is on the vendor. And unfortunately, you get to bear that sometimes, Stephen.
It was misconfigured is what the vendor was.
It's a feature. It's a feature.
Yeah.
Looking at we're moving to ransomware here. Ransomware remains a major threat. I think everybody thinks about this and hears about it pretty regularly. We had what Klint just told us, dwell time is still, your network's actually compromised for months. Still, we're still not detecting it for months. So ransomware remains a major threat. If a manufacturer discovered an attack today, what are the most important actions leadership should take during the first 24 hours?
I can tell you for the first 3 hours. Easy. So it should already be in your business continuity plan. If you don't already have one, just stop listening to me immediately and go do that. But after you call your cyber insurance company, after you call legal, you call a meeting, an all hands meeting for everyone impacted. You start by saying, we don't know what's happened yet, so there's nothing to report. But your company handbook says you are not allowed to post anything on social media or talk to any news outlet. You need to protect your reputation. The second thing you do is you tell people how they can continue working. Your network's down, that's fine. We have this off-site place where you can have internet access. Keep working, even if it's writing something down. So you're protecting your bottom line. The next thing you do is you tell where the IT team is, and then you forbid anyone from going there other than to bring pizza, because you need to make sure you're back up and running. And then you set expectations. You'll hear from me at this time, even if I have nothing to say. So you need to really reduce the chaos risk. And then that way you can continue to work to the best of your ability.
Eric, it looked like you were going to jump in.
Yeah, for us, it's more socializing our executives on what to do when this happens. And so we do a lot of tabletop exercises, which are really fun to go into high executives and say, you've been owned by ransomware. Do you want to pay? And then watch them discuss. That's really a fun event if you haven't done that. I really enjoy those. No, but it's, I think the previous presenter showed a thing about panicking. That's the first thing not to do is, like Brittany said, be well prepared in advance, because it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it happens, right?
Sure.
And then once all the executives are socialized to it, we have a crisis committee. It's the bat phone. We say, hey, we've had this thing. And they've had experience doing tabletops. They know the flow. They know what's going to happen. Doesn't mean they act accordingly because, well, this is a real one. Holy crap, But that's what we do. And we try to keep them aware of it. It's like doing fire drills and everything else. We're just like that. Now you got to do your cybersecurity drill as well.
Yeah, train like you fight. It'll help you out a lot. That's good.
And protect your people. I like what you said about do not let anyone in unless they're bringing pizza. So your executives will come in and they will demand answers every 17 minutes.
Oh.
And it will keep seconds. It'll keep your people from doing work. So as managers and leaders in your own spaces, do your best to, and I think we do this as well. It's like we will report out at 17:30. We will report out at 19:30 or top of the hour, and there's a separate bridge. Do not let your executives get on the working functional bridge.
Oh man, that's great advice. And especially you, Paul.
Unless you're Eric. But.
No, we do the same. I am the face to the executive team, so I take the beating and I just buy the pizza for the guys doing the real work. That's what I do.
That's perfect. Yeah, and Paul, you can't take stuff offline.
No.
So you're not just going to go unplug some turbine. We're just removing all this.
And we do not encourage that at all, right? So just from a forensic standpoint, you have to train your people. Don't turn it off. I know you feel like you just got a spider on your shoulder and you want to shake it off, and that's the first thing, and you hear Taylor Swift in your head. But really what you're trying to do is retain evidence, right? So if you're talking to your cyber team, they'll be like, do you have it with you right now? They're going to want it. And they'll save it off. They'll take an image. You can keep doing what you're doing. But going through the tabletops that Brittany mentioned will train your people to fight that first urge of turn everything off, unplug everything. I'll say when we were working with some of these LPCs and we said, hey, we have a forensics team. Do you have an image? We'll happily run through that for you and tell you maybe what happened. And they're like, oh, what? We just turned it off and we just, reinstalled everything. Great. But now I don't know how to protect you in the future. I don't know how they got in and what they did. So when you're going through these processes, be sure that you've run through those steps, those tabletops, to say there are precursors before the knee jerk happens.
So I just got my 5-minute warning. So I'm going to skip to the last question real quick, and we'll do some speed dating here real quick. But this is our framework and compliance question. Which standards, frameworks, or guidance should manufacturers be paying the closest attention to today?
IEC 62443.
62443, IEC. Any other?
There's too many. And the reason I say that, I came out of a meeting this morning. We're talking about California has new regulations for manufacturing. We're a worldwide manufacturer, so I have to deal with UNECE out of Europe. We export to the South Korea market. They have their own thing, and they're all a little bit of a variation of 27001 or one of the IEC things. So we are constantly fighting that battle, and it's ever evolving. There isn't a set strategy for that stuff.
Yeah. What we need is a new standard to manage all the standards.
Exactly.
XKCD with the 17. Yeah. I will say for us, there's all these other, like NERC, SIP, and whatever. The NIST CSF 2.0 has something that kind of has translated between different industries. It just gives you a kind of generic framework that your executives should be naturally able to adopt, even if underneath it you have the ISOs and the IECs and the 27000 series and all that as well. But we've had some success in communicating with some of our other vendors and our direct serve customers like Volkswagen with the CSF 2.0 framework.
Very good. Brittany, do you have a favorite?
You know what? We do it a little differently. I'd love to say we have a team that makes sure we're always NIST compliant, but the truth of the matter is our cyber insurance policy comes out
Oh, nice.
and it says, hey, you need EDR. And it's so much less expensive to implement and maintain threat detection than it is to pick up the increased cost. So we let our cyber insurance company back us into compliance.
Nice, yeah. And how many people remember when your cyber insurance application was 3 questions?
Oh,
And now it's 17 pages, and 15 of them are things that are exculpatory for the insurance agency. But you still got to have it. Still got to have it.
it's an audit. Yeah.
Any questions from the audience? Yeah,
Yeah, we
right
got
here.
some questions here.
Always have questions. So in the environment that I play in, critical infrastructure, and then now Department of Defense, Department of Energy, manufacturing, we have CMMC and other rules. The biggest thing that we keep catching is people have older PLCs, no idea what's on it, no idea how to back it up. Any suggestions, any guidance for people who are running that older stuff? And then how do you protect if it breaks tomorrow?
We have critical spares. That's just a hot swap replacement we have to keep. That gets more and more expensive and harder. We have to have firmware that we do have to know. So that's a NERC regulation. We have to follow it. But in general, standardize your protocols as best you can. So like we'll run a lot of DNP3, for example. That means I can keep operations up even when I slam something new in because I have to. But test your critical spares.
Any more? Super shy. All right. Well, as we kind of land the plane here, we're looking at security, future connectivity, and uptime, right? And that's the battle you fight. So appreciate everything that you 3 do to do that, and what you do, Stephen, to build it, because they're using your products and you're getting good feedback from them, and it's always interesting what you can find out there. So in closing, I'll ask one question to you all. So as we go visit critical infrastructure places, when we test a substation, for example, let's say an electric substation, doesn't really matter if it's distribution or transmission. What percentage of those do you think are on the internet? And when I say on the internet, that means someone can plug in a laptop and send a Teams message anywhere in the world. If you took a guess, what do you think it would be?
50%.
Who said 50%? That is correct. So that's our experience. 50% of them are on the internet. And that, by the way, is always 100% a surprise to everybody standing there. Us as the vendor, them as the customer, it's always interesting. And then we do have this dilemma of legacy products, right? And let's keep in mind, that is good engineering. The fact that they still work, the fact that you can still use that, the fact that you still have Windows 3.1 and it's functioning is great. If you don't know why that's a problem, what I need you to know is that before Windows 7 came out, when an authentication box popped up for Windows, you could just hit escape and you were logged in. Okay. I remember so many things. I was testing a plant one time in Oklahoma, and I went in there and I sat down. How I got in there is a whole different story. We won't get into that. That was kind of the red team aspect of it. But I sat in an operator terminal and I opened a config.ini on an old, we won't name the vendor here, but there is a CVE for it now. And I just learned that anybody sitting there could decode any password for any of the control system. And man, if that boiler started to fire, people would be in trouble. It would create a hydrofluoric acid cloud, and everybody within a few hundred miles would not be alive. And that's why that's still a risk, and you have to put these other compensating controls in place. So grateful to these folks for doing that. Thank you to Peak Performance for having us out here to do this. And man, thank the panel for me as we're finish up here.